All right, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about a huge question for any high-risk industry. What if our whole approach to safety is, well, just wrong? What if that goal we all chase, zero harm, is actually making us less safe? We're going to explore why chasing perfection might just be the biggest enemy of real, lasting safety.
So let me start with a question for you, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Think about the last time you dodged a bullet, a real serious incident. Did you get through it because your systems were robust and your defenses held strong, proving you're actually good? Or was it because someone was standing just a few inches to the left, meaning you were just plain lucky? The answer to that question tells you everything you need to know.
You know, for decades, the big target on the wall has been zero harm. And look, it sounds great. It sounds noble, right? But it creates this really dangerous paradox. See, when zero is the only acceptable number, you end up with what some call a looking good index. People get scared to report the small stuff, the near misses, the little problems, because nobody wants to be the one to mess up that perfect score. And what happens? All that vital information gets buried, leaving leaders totally blind to the real risks that are bubbling up right under the surface.
To really fix this, we need to do a complete 180 in our thinking. We have to stop defining safety by what's missing, by the lack of accidents. We need to start defining it by what's actually there. It's not an absence, it's a presence.
The old way is pretty simple, right? If nothing bad happened today, hey, we were safe. Success was just a lack of bad stuff. But think about it. A clean record today tells you absolutely nothing about what's coming tomorrow. It's like trying to drive a car by only looking in the rearview mirror. It's totally reactive.
The new way completely flips that on its head. It says safety is the presence of capacity. And this is a huge shift. We're not talking about preventing every single mistake anymore, because that's impossible. We're talking about building a system so strong, so resilient, that it can handle mistakes when they inevitably happen.
So, what is capacity? Here's the key. Capacity is the ability to fail safely. We just have to accept that in any complex job, humans are going to make errors. It's totally normal. The goal isn't some impossible state of perfection, it's building a system that can absorb failure without it turning into a catastrophe.
Now, this new way of thinking isn't just a vague idea. It's built on a really solid foundation of 5 core principles. People in the field often call it HOP, which stands for Human and Organizational Performance. These are the new rules of the game.
Let's just run through them real quick. Number 1, error is normal. People are fallible. 2, blame fixes nothing. It's a dead end. 3, context, not character, drives behavior. Super important. 4, learning is absolutely vital. It's the engine for improvement. And finally, number 5, how leaders respond to failure matters more than anything else.
Okay, let's zoom in on number 3, because this one is a total game changer. People do things that make sense to them at the time. Think about that. Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to do a bad job today. No way. The actions they take are shaped by the tools they have, the procedures they're given, and the pressures they're under in that moment. So if you want to change the outcome, you have to fix the context. You can't just blame the person.
And this leads us to what is, without a doubt, the most critical principle for anyone in a leadership position. Your reaction, your response to bad news, to an error, to a failure. That single moment sets the tone for everything. It determines whether your organization is going to learn or if you're just going to drive the next problem underground.
So as a leader, you're at a fork in the road. On one path, you've got a blame culture. That creates fear, plain and simple. Fear makes people hide information, and learning just grinds to a halt. But on the other path, you have a learning culture. That creates psychological safety, where people feel safe to report problems, which allows the organization to see reality for what it is and actually get better.
Okay, so the mindset is there. That's great. But how do you actually do this stuff? Well, it all starts by finally admitting that there's a huge gap between our official procedures on paper and what's really happening on the front lines. Think of it like there are 2 worlds. You've got work as imagined. That's the clean, perfect, step-by-step process we write in the manual. And then there's work as done. That's the messy reality, you know? It's full of adjustments, workarounds, and constant change. A leader's job isn't to be the police for the imagined world. It's to be a humble explorer of the real world, to find out where the system is actually weak.
So how do you explore that world? You start by changing the questions you ask. And the first step is to totally banish one question from your vocabulary. The single worst thing you can ask after something goes wrong is, why did you do that? I know it sounds innocent, but it is dripping with judgment. It immediately puts the other person on defense and just slams the door on any chance for an honest conversation.
Instead, try this simple little tool. It's called TEDS. Instead of interrogating people, you invite them to tell a story. You say, hey, tell me about how this job usually goes. Or explain to me, what's the toughest part of this whole task? Describe for me the steps you took. And maybe the most powerful of all, just say, show me. This is how you start to close that gap between work as imagined and the reality of work as done.
Look, if you remember just one question to ask when you're out in the field, please make it this one. Where do our official procedures not fit the reality of your work, and how do you and your team adapt to get the job done safely anyway? I promise you, the answers you get to that question are pure gold. They will show you exactly where your system is breaking down.
Now, it goes without saying, right? If we change our philosophy and we change our behaviors, we absolutely have to change how we keep score. That old dashboard just isn't going to cut it anymore. It's time for a new one.
For years, this number, 0 lost time injuries, has been the holy grail of safety. And don't get me wrong, a low number is great, but a score of 0 doesn't actually tell you if you're safe. It just tells you you haven't been seriously hurt recently. It can't tell you the difference between being good and just being lucky.
The new dashboard measures the presence of capacity. So instead of just tracking our failures, we start tracking our strengths. Things like learning throughput. How fast are we turning insights from the field into real improvements? We can measure barrier health. Are our most critical safety defenses actually working? And a psychological safety index. Do our people genuinely feel safe enough to speak up? These are the things that show you have real resilience.
And look, making this shift happen isn't just about talking a good game. It requires real, concrete commitments from the top. We're talking about things like signing a formal charter that says we choose learning over blame. It means officially adopting these new capacity indicators, and it means scheduling regular visits to the front line, not as inspections, but as walkthroughs and talkthroughs, to genuinely learn how work gets done.
Which really brings us back to the core choice, doesn't it? The old way of safety was this impossible chase for perfection, a system with 0 errors. The new way is all about building resilience, a system that knows error is normal and is tough enough to fail safely. So let me ask you one last time. Which system are you building?